All right, for this video, I wanted to talk a little bit about the child tax credit and whether or not you need valid tax ID numbers for your children in order to claim the CTC. So the short answer is yes, you do need a valid tax ID, specifically a social security number for your child in order to claim them as a qualifying child and get the child tax credit. So although this might seem obvious, I often see this done incorrectly, particularly when you have a newborn, right? So the social security number has to be valid for employment purposes. That's the first thing. So if you get an SSN and it's labeled not valid for employment, then it doesn't work, right? This person is not going to be a qualifying child for the child tax credit. So you can still claim them as a dependent, but you're not going to be able to get the CTC. And so for those of you who are not familiar, these not valid for employment SSNs, they're frequently issued to persons who have moved into the U.S., right? So they're permitted to live in the U.S., but they don't have a work authorization. So that often happens when you have somebody, a parent moves to the U.S. and they bring their child with them. And the child might receive an SSN, just for immigration purposes, but they're not permitted to work within the country. All right. Now, as far as timing on when these should be issued, right? Obviously, you're going to need the valid SSN issued and ready to go before you file the tax return. So in most cases for newborns, it can take a while to get the return. So if you have a child born towards the end of the year, you submit the application. Oftentimes you're waiting to get that SSN, and it might not be ready before the original due date. So if we look at the example here, and this is something I see very frequently, we have John and Jane have a son, James, who's born in November. So John submits the Social Security application for James, but it hasn't arrived before April 18th. So John and Jane are waiting to do their 1040 for 2022, and they are trying to claim James, but they can't claim him yet as a dependent because they don't have a valid tax ID number yet for James. They have to wait. So what they do in that case is file an extension, and that'll move the deadline up until October to file your 1040. And then during that time period, you just wait for the SSN to come through. And when it does, then you can go ahead and file. What I see too often, and it never works, is you might paper file the return or e-file. And instead of using an SSN for your child, which you don't have yet, you put something like applied for in there, or leave it blank, or put like all nines. Do not do that. The IRS will absolutely reject the return and the claim, and you won't get anything. So you're better off, submitting the application, waiting until that SSN comes through, and then you can go ahead and file the tax return and claim them as a qualifying child for the child tax credit. Now, if your child doesn't have an SSN but they have an ITIN, then the taxpayer, you might not be able to claim them as a qualifying child for the child tax credit, but you might be able to get the other dependent tax credit. So the ODC or the other dependent credit is available for kind of a broader range of dependents. So it can be qualifying relatives or certain types of children that would not qualify for the CTC, but you can get the ODC. So if you don't have an SSN for your child, well, there might be other credits available, but the long and the short of it is you're going to need a tax ID in order to file your tax return, claim any kind of dependents or credits, and then specifically with respect to the child tax credit, you need a valid SSN, and it has to be an SSN that's not limited in the sense that it's not been pegged or labeled as an SSN that's not valid for employment. All right, so I hope that helps. If you have any questions, feel free to leave me a comment below, and I look forward to seeing you again on the next video. Thanks.